So if you own a 2015 or newer F150 and you're looking for arguably one of the most affordable ways to get into a nice armored rear bumper with optional LED lighting, then you should be checking out the RedRock 4x4 Tubular off-road rear bumper, obviously with these LED light cubes installed, as you can see. At around the $600 price point, this will be one of the least expensive options currently available in general, and even with that optional LED lighting, it still remains one of the most affordable. But that's not to say this is a cheap bumper by any means. It's got a lot of cool features going about it that I really like. Obviously, it is a welded one-piece tubular design with reinforced plates here, measuring about 1/8 of an inch thick. Safe to say this thing will definitely stand up to abuse off-road, and it can even take some light strikes. Maybe it'll help you survive a rear-end collision if you're not going too fast. Obviously, it's a lot beefier than the factory bumper, and it ditches that painted finish in favor of a really nice baked-on powder coat finish. As I just mentioned, powder coat is a baked-on cured finish, so it's a lot stronger than paint. And even if you manage to scrape that stuff off and get underneath there, the stainless steel underneath will not rust or corrode, so you don't got to worry about this thing rusting out and falling off on you anytime soon. I'm also happy to say that the install is very straightforward. It gives a modest 2 out of 3 wrenches on my difficulty meter. It is a bolt-on application, and if you were reading some of the customer reviews or you had some questions about fitment, yes, it is compatible with the factory trailer receiver, as you can see beneath there. That's actually going to function as the mounting plate system for the new bumper, making it technically a direct bolt-on replacement. So again, 2 out of 3 wrenches on my difficulty meter, no cutting or drilling required or any custom modification for that matter. The lights themselves are plug and play, so that gets a really easy install, and it shouldn't take you more than 2 hours to get this done in the driveway at home with basic hand tools. It is a pretty damn heavy bumper, especially if you're reusing that trailer hitch, so it's helpful to have a friend on hand with you to help keep this thing in place while you tighten all those nuts and bolts down. So again, if you want one of the most affordable armored rear bumpers and you want some really cool lighting out back, maybe help you on the trails or the campsite or the work site for that matter, go ahead and stick around. And if you pull the trigger on the RedRock 4x4, go ahead and come back, get yourself situated. I'll show you guys what tools you need in your tool cart, and then I'll walk you through the install step by step. All right, to install your bumper, you'll need standard drive ratchets with an 8, 10, 13, and 21 millimeter deep socket. It's also helpful to have 2 13 millimeter wrenches for your light cubes, and you'll need a flathead screwdriver for some of the hardware on the factory bumper. Now, optional but helpful tools include a breaker bar, an impact gun, and an impact swivel socket. All right, so yes, obviously you can do this install in the driveway, but we've put our truck up in the air. That way you guys can get a better picture of what we're working with here. Now, first things first, we have to tackle a couple of connections. Specifically, I'm talking about the trailer hitch harness and then the 2 connections for the lights that are gonna light up your license plate. Go ahead and squeeze on the tabs to remove them. All right, so to tackle the license plate lights, pretty straightforward. Just rotate the bulb assembly itself and it'll pop out like so. Then for the trailer hitch connection, you can't really see it at the moment, but you just gotta squeeze on the little tab, depress it, and remove it. All right, with those connections removed, you're gonna pull these 3 nuts here, securing the bumper to the truck on the frame rails itself. You'll need a 21 millimeter deep socket for these, and if you're using power tools like me, it's obviously helpful to have a swivel because it is a tight fit. All right, now some of these might be a little bit too cramped for power tools, in which case it's very helpful to have a large breaker bar. Now I'm going to leave one of these nuts on here as well as on the other side. That way I can secure the bumper and have somebody hold it before I remove it completely. All right, so we have our factory bumper removed. We went ahead and we set them up next to each other. That way you guys can get a nice comparison and see some of the similarities and some of the differences between the two, right? And some of the things that stand out that I like in terms of differences are obviously that powder coat finish and that one-piece construction, right? Factory bumpers that are 2-piece here, you got the little painted trim underneath here made out of metal, and then you got this plastic on top. And I just kind of think it doesn't look as good as it could if it were one piece. This thing looks a lot more concise, it flows better together, and honestly I actually like this one because it matches the shape of the factory bumper. Factory bumper obviously does a good job of contouring to the body lines of the truck RedRock decided to keep things simple and relatively factory, so they went with a similar design, and I like that. I think some of the other armored bumpers are pretty big and bulky. Maybe they get a little bit too far into left field in terms of design. This thing keeps it pretty simple, and I personally enjoy that. Now, before we ditch our factory bumper, we have to remove some hardware. Specifically, we got to remove our trailer plug there. You need a flathead screwdriver for the tabs, and the same goes for the factory lights for the license plate. And you also want to have your keys handy because you got to get that spare tire lock. So we'll go ahead and we'll swap all that stuff over to our new bumper, and I'll show you guys how to get this one bolted up. All right, so we got all our hardware swapped over to our new bumper. Now at this point, you would actually install the new support brackets. However, if your truck is equipped with a factory hitch receiver like ours is, you're actually gonna be pulling the entire assembly off the factory bumper, swapping it over to the new one. That way you can get those studs on the frame rails to actually secure the new bumper. So in order to remove our factory trailer hitch receiver, we're gonna need a 13mm deep socket. All right, so we have our trailer hitch receiver removed from our factory bumper. Before we install it onto our new bumper, we're gonna install our light cubes. Now they do have their own hardware, specifically an M10 bolt and nut, and there's also a crush washer you wanna make sure you throw on there so these things don't come loose when you're driving around. All right, with our light cubes installed, we're gonna throw our trailer hitch receiver in place. Make sure it lines up with these holes right here on the bumper. We're gonna be using our double bolt plates to secure these. All right, so we're finally ready to throw our bumper in place. Now guys, this one is legitimately heavy, especially if you're reusing the factory trailer hitch receiver. So I got my buddy here, Joe, with his muscles to help me go ahead and throw everything in place, line up all those studs with the holes. Then we're gonna throw our nuts in place. Again, it's the same 21mm nuts we removed earlier. So once you get those secured, you're gonna need that 21mm deep socket to tighten everything down. All right, now that our bumper's in place, we're going to install the factory wiring harness for our trailer hitch connection, as well as both the lights for our license plate. All right, so now we're ready to install the wiring harness for our auxiliary lighting. So go ahead and unravel that thing. It's really long, and that's because we're actually going to be routing it up to the front of the truck itself. But at any rate, go ahead and grab the leads, plug them into each of the lights like so. Once you've done that, you're going to want to grab the zip ties included in the kit, secure the excess wiring to the frame rails where you see fit. Once you've done that, I'll meet you up front and I'll show you how to get this thing wired up to the battery itself. All right, so once you got that cabling routed and secured to the frame rails, you want to pull all that stuff up through the engine bay. Make sure you're not near any articulating suspension components. Obviously, you don't want to kink this thing or cause a break in it. You also want to keep it away from anything like your exhaust, or if you're working with an EcoBoost like us, obviously you want it away from that hot turbo. At any rate, once you've decided you got a good spot for all your wiring to get routed through, you want to end up at the battery itself. First thing you want to do is secure your fuse box, and in the case of our EcoBoost, I got a little ground wire right here. I'm going to secure that using an 8mm socket. Then you want the positive and the negative leads to go to the positive and negative leads on the battery terminal. You'll need a 10mm socket to secure those. All right, once you got the leads connected to the terminal, you can do a quick test of the lights. You should actually hear the fuse click in there. And you can check out back, obviously, see that the lights are turning on and off just fine. Once you've done that, you got to figure out where you're going to route the button itself. Now, the cable is long enough that you can pretty much go to the driver's side or the passenger side. There's actually a pretty easy way to go about it. There are actually two main rubber grommets here in the firewall. If you pop those out, that'll give you just enough wiggle room to get this through there. Then you can actually drill a hole in the dash or wherever you see fit to actually mount the button permanently. We're not going to show you guys that because really it's up to you to decide where you want that stuff. But at any rate, once you get that threaded in there, go ahead and secure it and you should be good to go. All right, so once you got your lights plugged in and you figured out where you want all that wiring to go, that'll wrap up the install. And that also wraps up my review of the RedRock 4x4 Tubular Off-Road Rear Bumper with optional LED light cubes. I'm Travis, thanks for watching, and for all things F-150, keep it right here at AmericanTrucks.com.